Hello, Samson here. So the thing is, for quite a very long time, I think I've had this desire to share knowledge, and I love speaking, but I've felt for a very long time, so to say, not given an opportunity. So was to stand in front of audiences and to speak. And with the COVID pandemic that hit some time ago, um, meeting up with people actually became so hard. And then the only option I think that I was left with that clicked to my mind was I can only share knowledge and I can only have this time to speak to you basically um, via a lot of media platforms that we have. So basically, I'm officially going to make my YouTube channel not private anymore. I think I opened it somewhere in 2017 where I was posting some content that was personal stuff, really. Yeah, me playing guitars, playing musical instruments, and stuff like that. Yeah, but basically, the whole gist of today's segment basically, I'm officially starting to give book reviews. I've been reading at least a book a week. So last year, 2021, I read over, I think, up to 60 books, if I'm not mistaken. The ones that I recorded, I read 60 books, which I think was more than that, including school literature that I read. Yeah, but that's the basic idea behind. And I'm basically going to be giving book reviews. So the first two books I've read this year, I think in the first week of 2022, were basically Atomic Habits by James Clear. And the other book I read was The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. So yeah, a review on Atomic Habits. The book is awesome to read. I think I found it enjoyable. It's quite a short book, not very long. I don't know whatever level a person has when it comes to reading can determine whether the book is long or the book is short. But basically, for someone like me who's been reading, a reader, so to say, I think Atomic Habits is quite a small book. It's a short book. Yeah. So let's delve right into the insights behind what Atomic Habits is about. So James Clear basically gives us his background history of what happened to him when he was somewhere in school where he was hit by a baseball, and then he was hospitalized for some time, and then he discovered this idea of working around habits and stuff like that. He actually knew that his life was only going to be improved by him taking action, improving certain habits. And then I think that was the motivation behind him writing Atomic Habits. So in his book, he defines atomic habits from the basic definition of what an atom is, simply a building block of every element where all molecules come from, and everything that is connected to that. So yeah, atomic habits is this idea that has to tell us that it is from these small things that we do. It is from the little things that we might not necessarily pay attention to, which actually bring up the great things that we might desire. So then the book is divided into four major sections, which I might call, because for a habit to be built, he gives us four laws and he gives us four principles on which they are actually built. So the first one is for a habit to be built, there has to be a connection of a cue. So a cue or cues are basically things that get your attention in order for you to get interested in something that maybe you want to engage in or something like that. And then from a cue, it graduates to become a craving. So after you've eyed something and then you start craving for it now. And then from a craving, it graduates to a response that you give it. So after you've responded, then it is a reward. And then it is from these four basic principles that he gives us the four laws in the book, which he elaborates. So the first law that he gives in his book, he says, for a habit to be built, basically what is needed is for it to be made obvious. So from a cue itself, it has to be obvious. And then what he says about making the habit obvious is you basically going back to what your identity is and what you really want out of your life. So the question is, does your behavior help you become the type of person you want to be? That is what is really going to give you a cue if you want to build on a habit, right? So then someone said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and then you're going to call it fate at the end of the day. So it's either you decide or you call it fate. Make the unconscious conscious, or you call it fate at the end of the day. So in order to make it obvious, all you need to do is simply ask yourself, is it in line with what your identity is, and what is it that you want to get out of it? Right away, the second thing that he talks about, the second law actually that he gives in building habits, is what he refers to as making it attractive. So basically, a cue has something that has to do with the obvious, and then a craving for it to be craved for, I think, to be desired so much. What is needed is attractiveness. So from attractiveness, what he talks about is you make it attractive. So the more attractive an opportunity is, the more likely it is to become a habit. So it's very easy to form a habit whenever you have something that is attractive like that. Yeah, so desire is the engine that drives every form of behavior. So when it's attractive, and then it is the desire that is in you that engineers actually the behavior. Your behavior is basically going to be influenced by that. And then moving on, the third law that James gives in the book, he says you're supposed to make it easy. Yes, he said it. You make it easy. So what does he mean when he says make it easy? So he gives some insight by saying the rate at which the behavior is repeated determines how long you take to make a habit out of it. And then he says the central idea is to create an environment where doing right is easy and possible. And then before any habit is established, it has to be improved. So before any habit is established, it has to be improved. So the basic idea is you just make it something that's easy to do. People are actually more inclined to get to do something that is easy. So when deciding between two similar options, normally what we do is we incline ourselves to do that which is easy. So if any habit you want to build is worth building, what you're supposed to do is just make it easy, and then it goes on like that. And finally, the last thing that he brings to life in building habits, he says you're supposed to make it satisfying. Yes. For a habit to be built, it has to give you a sense of satisfaction, right? So it's that thing where you just need to get satisfied out of the thing that you are immersing yourself in. So the problem at times isn't a knowledge problem that we have. That's what he says in his book. It's actually lack of consistency. So because you're not consistent enough, we don't get the satisfaction that we need. But if you want to get satisfaction out of the thing that you do, the habit that you're trying to form, then just be consistent. And then the funny thing that he brings out is he says you're supposed to make doing nothing enjoyable. Yeah, doing the same thing over and over brings us to a point where we're just bored, and then boredom clicks in, then you just don't want to do it anymore. But if you're supposed to be satisfied and enjoy the process, then you're supposed to constantly enjoy doing the nothings. So what he says is we're more likely to replace a behavior where the experience is satisfying. So whenever there is an experience that is more satisfying, you're more likely to replace either a bad behavior and form a new habit. Lastly, I want to point out the fact that there are these inverse laws that James Clear puts up in his book. So the inverse of the law of making it obvious is simply to make it invisible. So you reduce exposure. That is, you reduce the cues which your bad habits from your environment can bring to you. So you just reduce exposure. You just make it invisible. You make it obvious, you build it. You make it invisible. If it's a bad habit, you stop it. And then the second inversive law is basically making it unattractive. So you want to build, you make it attractive. You want to stop a bad habit, you make it unattractive. That is by reframing your mind. So you highlight the benefits of avoiding the bad habits that you do not want basically to attract. And then the third law of inversion, that is to make it difficulty. We heard that you're supposed to make it easy because people are inclined to doing something that is easy. If a habit is supposed to be built, it's something that's supposed to be easy and enjoyable to do. That is building a habit. But if you want to break a bad habit, what you do is you increase the friction. So the harder it is to do, the less interested you're going to be, and then the more effective you're going to be at breaking a bad habit. And then you're supposed to use what he calls a commitment device. So that is, you restrict your future choices to the ones that benefit you. So there are certain things that you can restrict yourself right now to, so that you just get yourself set for the future. That is how you break the habit. And then the fourth law of invasion is making it unsatisfying. So because you make it satisfying, you get the enjoyment that comes from there. But then the inverse of that is you make it unsatisfying. And one of the ways I think the book recommends of making it unsatisfying is by getting an accountability partner, a person who you can be asking how your behavior is either improving or deteriorating, basically. So yeah, these were the four laws of building and breaking habits. So the inverse and the direct, something that prompted me actually to get into reading the book. And I heard James quoted what he wrote in his book, saying your outcomes are a lagging measure of your habits, your net worth is a lagging measure of your financial habits, your weight is a lagging measure of your eating habits, your knowledge is a lagging measure of your learning habits, your clutter is a lagging measure of your cleaning habits. You get what you repeat. You get what you repeat. Atomic habits.